Exodus chapter 14, verse 15 says this: the Lord said to Moses, tell the people to move forward. The Lord said to Moses, tell Carmel Church to move forward. The Lord said to Moses, tell the church formerly known as City Church to move forward. We are moving forward to build the church, to reach more people in our community, to go to high school and junior high campuses and pull people out of darkness and into the light. Come on, to go downtown, feed the homeless, make a difference, pull people out of darkness and give them hope. Come on, that is our vision moving forward. We're not just moving forward to collect a bunch of money. We're moving forward to reach a lot of people. And so if you love reaching people, can you just clap your hands today? I get it. I get that this message is it's a sandpaper message. What I mean by that is, in my free time, if I get free time, I like to make furniture. And there are different processes to making furniture. One of the processes of making furniture is that you either paint it or stain it, and it's like a gentle process. You know, you have your table and you're like painting it, you know, it just feels nice and gentle. But there's a process to making the table where you pull out the sander and you get all the hard edges like gone. You take down kind of like some of the girth of the table. And it's pretty intense. And if it was the wood and it had a voice, it would be going, ah! This is kind of like one of those messages because we're going to talk about giving. Let me just tell you where we're going to land the plane today. Where we're going to end the message, just so you're ready, is that, like Pastor Nick said, one of the 52 cards on your deck of cards that you have on your chair is this one. If you pull it out and you grab a hold of it, it's the Move Forward Prayer Pledge. And I'm not trying to trick anybody into where we're going today. Want to let you know that at the end of the service, we're asking everybody that wants to move forward, everybody that's believing to move forward, everybody that's saying, this is my church, to fill this out. Even if you've already pledged, that we're going to do an act of unity and we're going to fill this out and we're all going to bring it up to the front together. I wrote on mine after Nick made that joke. I wrote, "This is the King of Hearts." So if there is a card that we're going to grab hold of today, to grab hold of unity today, to move forward today, it's this, and we're going to fill it out in just a second. But I get it, that this message can be difficult, right? Some of us, we cross our arms or we close off when we hear we're going to talk about money today. And I get it because I've been there. When I first understood the idea of generosity and that my money is not my money, that God's in control, it was pretty tough. I was 22 years old. I was at In-N-Out Burger, and I had just moved to San Diego, and I had heard about this idea of tithing. So what tithing is, if you're not familiar with it, is tithing is taking 10% of your income, everything that you get, and you bring it to the local church to build the church. And when I first heard this concept as a Christian, I remember the pastor on stage, and I'm thinking, he's trying to steal my money. Why is this guy saying that I'm supposed to take 10% of my money and give it to his paycheck? And it was tough. Some of it, nobody wanted to laugh. Everybody's a little awkward and uncomfortable there. Okay, but for me, so I had this idea that, okay, I've heard about tithing, and this is how I'm gonna tithe. I'm gonna take 10% of everything I earn, I'm gonna put it in an envelope, and I'm gonna decide where I'm gonna give it. And so I would give it sometimes to missionaries. I would give it to homeless people on the side of the road. I would buy things for my friends at times. I kind of negotiated and thought, if I buy a gift for somebody, then that's my tithe. So I'll just kind of like use that money for that. And then one day I'm sitting at In-N-Out. I'm 22 years old. I just graduated from college, and I had this idea. My roommate and I said, if I take my money at In-N-Out and I buy his In-N-Out with my tithe money, it's like I'm giving it to him. And if he takes his tithe and he buys my In-N-Out, then we're both giving it away and we're good with God. So I'm sitting there, and I always do this. I always eat my fries first, and then I eat my hamburger. It's just the way that I am. So I eat all my fries, and I pick up my hamburger. I'm about to take a bite of it. And I kid you not, I'm about like, And in my mind, I hear God say, there's a way that seems right to a man, but in the end, it leads to death. I thought, Jesus poisoned my hamburger. That moment forward, I made a commitment, and I knew that it was off. I knew that it was wrong, and I made a commitment to God that I would be faithful to tithe. From that moment, in and out, I think that every ounce of money that we've had that I know of, that we've had come in, I have tithed off of it. I read a quote, though, this week. This is intense, and I felt like, I'm not saying it to you. This is what God was saying to me. And it says, I'm kind of saying it to you. John MacArthur says this. John MacArthur, a great Bible teacher, says this: anywhere where there is religious hypocrisy and a double standard, there will be greed. I go to church on Sundays and I'd hear about tithing. He's like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And then I would leave and I would go on Monday and be like, no, I'm not going to do that. Anywhere where there's religious hypocrisy, that's me living one way here and one way here, there will be greed. Today I want to talk to you on the title of the message is this: the only investment that will make you truly rich. Today I want to talk to you about the only investment that will make you truly rich. Nick, if you can help me with the clock, so I know I have like an hour and a half left, I think, but I want to make sure that everybody gets out of here. I'm going to jump into Exodus chapter 35, verses 4-5 and 20-22. Pastor Jerry in this series has been preaching out of Exodus, and he tied it into Matthew chapter 6. I'm going to do the same thing today. And it says this in Exodus chapter 35, verses 4-5 and 20-22. It says, then Moses said to the whole community of Israel. Look at somebody, say whole community. Look at somebody else and say, that means everybody. Look at somebody else and say, you're my backup plan. Okay. Then Moses said to the whole community of Israel, this is what the Lord has commanded. Take a sacred offering from the Lord and let those with generous hearts present the following gifts to the Lord. Verse 20 says this: so the whole community of Israel left Moses. Catch this. We got to slow it down just for a second. In verse 4, it says that everybody, the entire community of Israel. So this is 3 million people that had left the captivity of Egypt, and they're out wandering in the wilderness, going into the promised land. And while they're out there, God is speaking to them. They're out there for 40 years. They had gotten out of captivity. They had built this shelter and all these tents. They're living in tents. And while they're out there in the middle of everywhere, God speaks to them and says, hey, I want you to build me a sanctuary. I want you to build me a big tent where I'll be, and you'll know that my presence is there. While they're out there, it says that the whole community of Israel heard Moses' command from the Lord, take a sacred offering. Verse 20, so the whole community of Israel left Moses and returned to their tents. Verse 21, all those whose hearts were stirred. Can you just say, stir my heart, God? Put your hand on your heart and say, stir my heart, God. Everyone whose hearts were stirred and whose spirits were moved came and brought their sacred offerings to the Lord. Let me just break this down for you. Here's what happens. All of San Diego County, 3 million people, they hear from God that through Moses that we're going to take a sacred offering. Everybody. It says everybody went home to their house. And maybe they looked around and they saw all their stuff. Maybe they looked and they saw their watches and their rings and their jewelry and their TV and their Xbox and their Nintendo Switch and their Tesla and all the stuff that they saw. And some of them, whose hearts were stirred, came back to Moses to give the offering. God gave them an invitation to everybody. He wanted everybody to give. All of them heard. All of them went home. And some of them came back. Why are we still talking about move forward and talking about the offering? Because our pastor is such a good pastor. He's a great pastor. The reason we're talking about this is not to get money out of our pockets. For one, it's to get money into the kingdom, to reach people, to put them in the kingdom of God. But also, It says in Philippians chapter 4 that the reason that we're taking this offering, the reason, Paul says in the New Testament, the reason we're taking an offering is not so that we can get the gift from the giver, but so that there will be fruit that abounds to the giver's account. When we give, God gives back. And what we want is we want everybody to look on the front of the bus of Carmel Church that says move forward, and that everybody gets on and everybody moves forward. Right now, we're not all on board, and that's okay. We'll pause, we'll wait, we'll talk about this, and we'll say, hey, let's all get on board and let's all move forward together. Verse 22, it says, both men and women came, all whose hearts were willing. Some of their hearts weren't willing. Today, what I believe that God wants to do in us is to stir our hearts, and all the hearts of all the people that are willing would say yes and would give. They brought to the Lord their offerings of gold, of brooches, earrings, rings from their fingers, and necklaces. They presented gold objects of every kind as a special offering to the Lord. Let me say it again. The whole community heard. They all went home. They all looked at their stuff. Some of them came back. And the some that came back were those whose hearts were stirred. Corrie ten Boom, who was a famous missionary who was in a concentration camp, and her sister died in the concentration camp. And when she got out, she said, I'm going to make my life mission to make a difference in people's life and to reach them for Jesus. Says this, the measure of a life, after all, is not its duration, but its donation. How do you make a difference? How do you make an impact? How do you take money from the kingdom of earth and our treasure we have here and put it in heaven? The way that we do it is to give it. And I get it, this can be hard. This was hard for the Israelites when they went home and they looked at their money and they looked at their riches and they looked at the rings and they looked at the stuff that they'd accumulated. Where did they get it? Where'd they get it from? You look at scripture and where they got it from a lot of hard toil, a lot of difficulty. It says that in Exodus chapter 12 that a lot of the rings, a lot of the jewelry that they got, that they gave, where they got it was after being 400 years in slavery and in captivity. As they're leaving Egypt, they asked the people, God said you can go after some of the riches, and the payment they got for 400 years of giving their lives and generation after generation after generation dying in slavery was the jewelry. It's not easy, is it? When we take an offering up, I get it. I've held on like this, you know. I've cried in a lot of offerings, and it's not because like God's moving. It's because, man, I don't want to do this. This is their life. This is their life. When we talk about money, I get why this concept can be difficult at times, because we can think this is my whole life. This is what I sacrifice my time for. This is what I sacrifice time away from my family for at times. This is what I sacrifice for. It's to earn all this stuff and to get all this money. And it's not just a little bit of cash that came because I found it or I got a check in the mail and it was easy. This is life. This is time. This is energy. This is virtue. This is slavery for them. Numbers chapter 31, verse 50 says that they earned some of the finances they got was while they were in the middle of the wilderness. And as they're in the middle of the wilderness, they go to war. Literally, people are dying to get this money. It represents slavery. It represents all their time, their energy. Literally, blood, sweat, tears, the lives of many people are represented by what they gave in the offering, and it's not easy. Some of us like, you're going to go to work this week and you're like, I get it. I'm enslaved to my boss right now. If they're in the room right now, don't make eye contact, right? But it can be tough. It was tough for them. It can be tough for us too. They fought for it. Why are we still talking about this? Because we want everybody to embrace kingdom ideas and theology on how to get your finances from grabbing a hold of you and making no difference after we die and saying, I'm going to put it into the kingdom of heaven. How do we do that? What's the difference? What's the difference between the Israelites that went home and said no to giving and the ones that went home and said yes to giving? It wasn't a financial condition, it was a heart condition. What's the difference? Those whose hearts were opened to God to be stirred, their hearts were stirred and they gave. Are our hearts open today to what God says? Pastor Jerry last week, he went from Exodus chapter 35 and Exodus 24, and he jumped to Matthew chapter 6. And I want to do that as well. We're going to jump to Matthew 6, verses 19 to 21. And I think this is Jesus giving the most famous sermon in the history of all sermons. I know like today you get me, next week you get Pastor Jerry. You're probably excited about that. They got Jesus. In the most famous sermon ever, Billy Graham says it of this sermon. The Sermon on the Mount is the most important sermon ever preached, and its teachings are essential to our understanding of the Christian life. Why is this important? Because he starts talking about finances. And he says this, I'm going to paint you a picture of what it looks like. Because everybody here in the room, everybody on the planet has two treasuries. Everybody has two bank accounts. Everybody has two treasure chests. And he says in Matthew 6, verse 19 to 21, don't store up treasures here on earth where moths eat them and rust destroys them and where thieves break in and steal. Instead, store up for yourself treasure in heaven. These are clouds. We're in heaven, frolicking, right? On one side, this is your treasure on earth. Let me explain the illustration here. In the middle is a golden gate, which is not biblical. I tried. I was trying to find a verse that said that when you get to the gates of heaven, because I've always learned this growing up, they're the golden gates, you know? Not the golden arches. We love you, McDonald's, right? But the golden gates. In Revelation, it actually talks about that when you get to heaven, there will be gates of pearl. I didn't know how to make a gate of pearl, so we have a golden gate, right? But this is your treasure, representing your treasure on earth. This is the transition from the earth side to the heaven side. And Jesus says that there's two treasures. There's one that we all have here on earth, and there's one that we all have here in heaven. Verse 20, it says, store your treasures in heaven where moss and rust cannot destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. He says, wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will also be. So here's the picture. We have two treasure chests, the earth side and the heaven side. I felt like God said, break it down this way. Ask 4 questions. Ask us all 4 questions. How do we stir our hearts to give? How do we examine our hearts to know where our hearts are today? First thing I think that God would ask us as we look at these verses is this: where is your treasure? If there's 2 treasure chests, where is your treasure? God has been working on me and Gabby. We've been talking about like, where is our treasure? The other day, this has been going deep. I mean, we're here and we've been hearing this message and we made our pledge and then God challenged us and we increased our pledge and God challenged us and we're praying for a bigger number. But I know what's on this side. If there's 2 treasure chests, I know what's on this side, and I bet you guys know what's on this side too. What do I mean by that? If we went around the room, probably everybody knows how much is in your bank account. You probably know the cars that are in your driveway. You might know how much crypto you had and now have, right? We know what's on this side. I know what's on this side. I know it. The guy version of Pinterest is Zillow. If you own a house, that you probably know how much your house is worth, right? I use a online budgeting software. It's what we use, and I can go on it, and it shows me what's your net worth. It shows you what your net worth is, and I could tell you right now within $1,000 what it says about us. Because I looked at it probably 12 or 14 times yesterday, and it didn't change. But I just keep looking at it, because I think it shows me what my value is. We know what's on this side, right? If there's 2 treasures, we know what's on this side. Where is your treasure? God would tell us you have an account on this side as well. Man, God's been challenging us. I'm just going to say it to all of us because I think is there anything over here? What is in your heavenly bank account? Jesus says there's two treasures. This one's got, Gabby counted, I have 14 pairs of shoes. She counted last week. She pulled them all out. I thought, why do I have 14 pairs of shoes? Some of them I haven't seen in like years. We have all our clothes, we have all of our stuff, and it's here, and it will never get here unless we do one thing. We have to give it. Your treasure here doesn't get here unless we give it. You get your treasure there by giving it here. But the question is, second question that Jesus asks us is, where do you want your treasure? The breakdown of this verse, and I think there's a key to it, and it's the moths, right? We were in Yuma, and there were like pterodactyl moths there. Literally, they were like the size of a pterodactyl. Yesterday, I went out to the car at like 9 o'clock in the morning, and one had gotten trapped inside the car. And I opened the door up, and I sat down, and I hear this. And I look up, and this is pterodactyl moth that is like the size of the window, banging on the window, trying to get out. I was like, ah! Gabby, can you go out to the car and open the door? Moths break in, or moths come in and they eat. Where is your treasure? Is your treasure where moths eat them? And there's a key to this. Why is the moths important? Now, all of us have clothes in our closet, right? Some of us have probably had moths eat our clothes before. Have you ever had a moth, while you're walking down the street, land on your shoulder and start eating your clothes? You know, it's probably never happened. You know why? Because moths don't come after your clothes when you're wearing them. This says that your treasure that's stored up. There's the word treasure in this verse, in the original language, is thesaurizo, not chorizo. Thesaurizo. I know. They say that like Greek is like when you're preaching, you don't share like the original language. It's like the Greek is like your underwear. It's there for support, but you don't have to show it to everybody. But that was supposed to be funnier than what it was. All right. It's not in my notes. Okay. Thesaurizo. What does that mean? It's not just treasure that you have. God's okay with you having some money in your bank account. He's okay with you having a car. He's okay with you having a house. He's okay with you having a watch and some stuff. Maybe he doesn't want us to have 14 pairs of shoes, but the reason is because what this treasure is it's saying stored up treasure that's more than you need. Stored up treasure that's more than you need. That's why the moths eat it. Is because it's sitting in the closet and you're not wearing it and you don't know it, and you pull out the shoes and you're like, man, I had that. I wore those the last time 3 years ago. I paid $120 for them. And what is it doing? It's doing nothing except getting eaten by pterodactyl moths. Don't store it up here on earth. Don't put a stockpile here, but we do this, right? We do it. I think I have money as an illustration somewhere, right? But this is what it looks like. This is not real money, but I had 4 piles of it, but we'll use one. Okay, what happens is I get my paycheck, and this is my treasure. I put it in here. It's like, this is mine. Don't touch it. I get my next paycheck. Make sure nobody comes and steals it. Let me check it, see if it's still there. Look on mint.com again. Still there, okay. You look at Zillow, see if it's still in there. Okay, it's going up, all right. This is mine. But where do you want it? Do we really want it here as a Christian? Do we really want it here? Or do we want it where it's gonna last forever? What do I mean by that? You won't get to heaven and you open up the treasury of heaven and you see that you are worth $1 million. Or you have 3 cars You won't get there and you won't see that. What is the treasure of heaven? The treasure of heaven is people. That is the treasure of heaven. And when we talk about moving forward and we're going from here and we're trying to get everybody to be a part of getting over here, what we're talking about is reaching more people. That's why the number one prayer point for Easter is 1,000 people. That's why the number one prayer point for Move Forward is 1,000 people. Because we're not settling for people going to hell because we're willing to say this is more important than that. I'm not saying that God doesn't want you to live a good life, but what God wants is he wants treasure that abounds to your account that will last forever, because the day you die, the day I die, everything on this side stops and is meaningless. But everything we take from this side, and how do we get it to that side, is we give it on this side and it gets to that side and it reaches people. How do we do that? We let go of it and we don't let it control us anymore. Where is your treasure? We know. Where do you want your treasure? You have to ask yourself. Third question is, how do we get it there? How do we get it to heaven? And this is my second time, and I'm surviving on Red Bull and Pixie Stick, so I can't remember what I said, but this is what I'm going to say now. How do we get it there? You can't get it there to heaven unless you give it here. I remember helping lead a mission trip in China a few years ago. And we were there and we were driving home at maybe 1 o'clock in the morning at the end of trying to share the gospel with some people, and had an opportunity to share with some college students. And we're driving home, and on the sides of the road, there's all these people and they have these fires. And I was like, why are all these people having fires on the side of the road? Literally on the road as we're driving on the edge of it, they're having these fires. And I look close and it looks like money that they're burning. And I thought, why are they doing that? And so I asked the guy that was with us, who was a missionary there, I said, what's all that? Why are they burning money? He said, what they're trying to do is they're trying to get their money from here to their family in eternity that have died and paying their way out of hell. He said it's called hell money. You can look it up on Wikipedia, and that's what they do. He said what they used to do is they used to burn real money. And they realized that it wasn't doing anything and it didn't work, so they still do it to follow the religious practice, but it doesn't do anything. If we really want our money to get there, how do we get our treasure from here to there? We give it here. The Israelites all heard. They all went home. They looked. Some of them gave. The ones that gave opened up their hearts to God and say, will you stir my heart? I give you everything. Last week, Pastor Jerry shared Matthew 6, verse 21. It says, wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will also be. It's if we take this moment, in moments like this, and we don't tune off or tune out or disconnect, but we say, God, I'm willing for my heart to be stirred. I am willing for my heart to be stirred. I'm willing to give whatever you say to give, because it all came from you anyways, and I don't want to look back from here and look there and say, man, I wish I could have taken some of that and made a difference over here in some people's lives. I don't want family members that don't get here because I'm not willing to sacrifice something there. I don't want to look back on the junior highs and the high schools that are going crazy right now and say, you know what, I had something there that could have helped. That could have helped the kid that ended his life last year. We got to do the memorial service. I want to give something that gets them from the pain of here to the promise of here. That's what I want. If you're willing to say, God, you can stir my heart. We've given. We have $267,000 that's given. Or pledged, 61,000 given. 92 people said yes. $74,000. More people that last week filled out that card and said, I'm praying about giving more. That's our church saying, you know what? This isn't good enough, but we're going to give it here and we're going to get it there. What does it look like? It looks like we're opening up the treasure of our church, the money of this house. Danny, can you come up? Danny's one of our interns, one of our campus reps. Will you take this and go to the campuses and reach more students? Will you do that? Okay, this is from the church. Go reach some people and get them here. What does it look like? First service, Flora, who helps in kids' church. Anybody love Scott and Flora? They help in kids' church. If you have kids in there, you should clap because your kids are quiet. They're having fun in there, and we can take a nap in here while Pastor Gabe's preaching. How did she come? I don't know, 12, 14 years ago? It's because there was a group of people that said, you know what, I'm going to give. There was a businessman specifically that gave over $50,000, said go to the campuses and reach people. He said, I'm taking some of my treasure, I'm opening up the chest, and I'm going to put it there. So what did he do? Flora, in kids' church, one of the ministry care pastors. We went to Mount Carmel High School, went on that campus, and she came from a Muslim home, and she heard about Jesus. Someone invited her to the campus club. She gave her life to Jesus there. Somebody said, hey, come to the church. She came to the church. She met Scott. They got married. They have 2 great kids, but it didn't end there. I don't know how much money that business guy has, but I can guarantee you that this is one of the greatest treasures that he has, is the one that's over there. Jesse's up on the front row right here. He started coming to the church because Flora got so on fire for Jesus, so on fire for God, because somebody gave some treasure to buy some pizza to attract some kids to this campus club. Talked about Jesus, got him to church. She got so excited, she went back to her campus, started handing out flyers. One of them was to Jesse, who came to the campus club. He gave his life to Jesus, and he's here, and he's planted in the church, and he's a great man. You know what that is? That's taking students from campus, and that's putting them in heaven. Come on, that's taking homeless from downtown that we go and feed, but we do more than that. We pray for them with Kome and the team, and it's getting them from hell and getting them into heaven. Where do we want our treasure? Last question is this: will you give it? Will we give it? Where is our treasure? Where do we want it? How do we get there? How do we get it there? And will we give it? I'm going to transition into a moment where we're going to actually take those cards, and I just believe by fear, I'll tell you where my fear has been. My fear has been that we have this moment and we ask for the offering to come up, that everybody fill out that card, whether you've already given, whether you've already pledged or you haven't, that everybody'd fill it out and a few people would bring it up. My faith is, I talked to Pastor Jerry this morning. He said, our faith is that everyone in the room says, I'm moving forward with the church and bringing it up. That's what God wanted for the Israelites. That's why he shared it with everybody. He didn't say, I'm going to share this message or this vision with everybody, and I hope that some of them do it. He shared it with everyone because it was for everyone. Will we give it? As you ask God for him to stir your hearts on what to write, and there's no pressure. Let me say this, there's no pressure. This is not about giving emotionally. This is about giving responsively. This is not about giving because I'm sweating a lot or I cried a little bit. This is about giving because God has stirred our hearts and we're giving responding to what he says. It's not emotional, it's responsive. But I want to share a story with you. We had a youth night maybe a few months ago, and we had the offering that came during, right before we went back into worship. And there's one of the junior high girls who had recently started coming to the church, and her heart just was stirred during the offering, and she wanted to give, and she didn't have any money, and so she said, well, I got to find something, some way that I can give. And maybe just a few days earlier, she had gotten a brand new pair of shoes. She wanted these high heels so that she could wear them to church. And so she comes in, they were like the highest high heels ever. I don't think she'd ever worn them before, so she came into church and she was so happy, like smiling because she had these new shoes on. She was like, I couldn't do it either, so I'm not like, But the offering came around, and these brand new shoes that she had. She came up to the box that we had in the front. She said, I'm going to give these. She ran around after the service without any shoes on, with the biggest smile on her face. She walked out to her car. We walked out to her car, told her parents, we're sorry, your daughter doesn't have shoes. We tried to give them back to her, and she said, no, I can't give those, take those back because I gave them to God. What did we do with the shoes? What do we do with them? We probably took them down to Mexico, either to the orphanage, or we took them down to the dump ministry. There's probably some little junior high girl that's there, and she has like the prettiest high heels on, trying to figure them out. You know what her offering did? It didn't take her shoes from here and put them here. We're not looking to get shoes here. We're not looking to get money here. We're not looking to get cars here. We're looking to get people here. You know what happened? I don't know, the shoes won't be there, but the feet will. We take them to Mexico, we share the gospel. When we go to the campuses, we talk about Jesus. We go to our community, we talk about Jesus. We put signs up, we reach people. We have over 1,000 people at Easter. 100 people give their lives to Jesus. People get planted into this church. They move from here to there. How do we do it? We don't get it there unless we give it here. I'm done and I'm lightly over time, but here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna believe on the faith side of things, not the fear side. I believe that all of us should take that card, not asking you to give emotionally. There is zero pressure here. Zero pressure here. What we are asking is that everyone here would say, God, would you stir my heart? And if he does, give. God, we believe that it's everybody in the room. Everybody in the room, we believe it. God, this is not about emotional giving. It's about responsive giving. God, would you help us? Would you speak to us? Would you stir our hearts to give?